The question I'll be answering today is, how does the web work? How do you type a web address and then get a full page of information? So you might be thinking, of course, I already know how the web works, but wait a minute, you might be missing some crucial aspects. And if you're a beginner, just hold on. Do you know what DNS is, or CDN, or IP address? Or do you know which browser to use as a web developer, and why do you use them? Some persons use browsers just because it's their favorite browsers. If you don't know any of this, watch this video where I explain further. Because in real life, you might get stuck with terms like configure the DNS, what is your IP address, or CDN. But it's actually not that complicated. Hopefully, this gives you a big picture. We'll dive into the details and see this in action. In this course, I like to mix theory with practical examples so that it makes sense when we get into the practical, and then you can come back and watch the theory again. Okay, welcome everyone. If this is your first time joining this channel, this is one of my video series on web development fundamentals for everyone, and in this topic I'm talking about how the web works. So the truth of the matter is that most designers don't know this. So let's start from the basics of the web. When you type a URL into the web browser and you hit enter, a whole process begins. So your browser sends a request to a server. So the server processes the request and sends to your browser web page files. It's just like magic. A lot of things goes under the hood. This process is also known as the client-server architecture. So where your browser is the client and the server that hosts the web pages is, as the name implies, is a server. But hold on, that's not all. Don't go anywhere yet. We see that websites are built using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript files. So HTML defines the structure, while CSS handles the design, and JavaScript add interactivity. These are the major files that are like the starter files. But there are other files like the image files to store all your images that you want to show on the web. Of course, the files are not limited to this, but on a fundamental level, this is the only files that you have to create in the beginning. So it's that simple. As a beginner, all you need to think of is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So every web page is made up of contents, and that begs the question, how do we define the content? And that's where HTML comes in. Of course, you don't have to memorize the names. HTML, which is hypertext markup language, you don't have to memorize the names. You'll get used to them. I still want to proceed further on HTML for the beginners. So essentially, HTML organizes and structures all the content you see on the web page. It's just like a normal Word document that has headers and different types of paragraphs, links, etc. So HTML also helps us to replicate the features that we see on a Word document on our web pages, and more, of course. So CSS is responsible for the colors, the layouts, the fonts, and all the visual aspects. So it's like dressing up the frame of your website. Just like you can change the colors in your Word document, you can do this using CSS on the web page. And the JavaScript file is about action or doing something on the web. So things like the button, and then you have a list that you want to arrange in chronological order. You can use JavaScript to do this. So instead of just being a page that you look at, every web page that you can interact with, you use JavaScript. So this activity, of course, I cannot show you in Word document, but we can see it on the site. Things like interactive forms and dynamic contents are possible with JavaScript. In summary, JavaScript enables the web pages to react to users' action. So these are the fundamental files of the website: the HTML, the CSS, and the JavaScript. It's very easy to create these files, so look at it in the next video. And so far, if you have learned something already, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe. I know it's hard for everyone to hit the like button. Standouts. How does these files get to the users for them to view it? And we're going to look at it now. This is where the web servers come into the game. What is a web server? A server takes the files, package them up, and then send them out to whoever calls them. It's a server, it serves. Don't leave me. Now, you are looking for a files and it sends them out. So when you use server, there is security that can be put in place. The server also handles safe communication between the server and the user. And we have examples of server like the Apache web server, which is built on Linux, and then you have the Nginx and other popular web server that runs on Linux. Now let's talk about IP address and how they are used. Some of you have not heard of IP address, but let's talk about IP address and how they factor into all of these things. So IP address looks like 192.168.0.54. This is what you see on the local network. This is the structure. Every device in your network will have different IP address. So on your network, you can uniquely identify a device. So it's like your phone number. You can talk to different devices by IP address. This is what happens locally on your network. For instance, your computer, your smartphone, and even your smart TV all have unique IP addresses. And on a global scale, we have billions of devices connected. So my internet provider will provide me with an IP address. Your website have an IP address. Usually, my network will have a dynamic IP address that will change over time. But for a website, it has to be a static IP address. So every web page must have a static IP address. So the IP address is a unique identifier that says, hey, I'm here, so that we can always identify with the specific IP address. So now let's talk about the domain name. You have seen this everywhere. So a domain name is the human readable address of a website like YouTube. So, and it's much easier to remember than an IP address. Then domain names are managed by registrars, like, of course, you've heard of GoDaddy and Namecheap, which is the one I usually use. And these domain names are actually regulated by ICANN. So it's the organization that holds the list of all registered domain names. So different registrars can charge different amounts per year. So if you register your domain name and wants to renew, you can take the domain name and go to another registrar. So the GoDaddy, the Namecheap, these guys are the registrars. So the next thing we'll look at is the DNS, the domain name system, DNS. It translates domain names into IP address. So it's much like a phone book that translates a person's name into their phone number. So if your phone book, in your phone book, you store people's number with their names, and whenever you want to call that person, you search for their names in your phone book and then you dial. So that's the same thing that the DNS does. So it's like the phone book of the web or a contact list of the web. So this ensures that when you type a domain name into your browser, you are directed to the correct IP address. And the question is, we have a web server that has an IP address 826 something like this. How do we let people know that our domain name is connected to this IP address? That is where DNS comes into play. So DNS is also called the A record. So it connects the domain name to the IP address. The concept of DNS is very simple, but yet it can get complicated. You can do a ping lookup to see IP address that are connected to your favorite domains. So on Windows, you open your command line by typing ns lookup, and then you could see the IP address that is returned. So we can use tools like ns lookup to check the DNS records. And then the next thing we'll talk about is the ports. There are different ports and SSL for securing our information with the web. Ports are communication endpoints for a device. Imagine a port as a single door to a hall where only one person can enter or exit at a time. So this means that only one door is responsible for all people entering a hall. More than one person cannot enter at a time, and your computer needs to run many activities at a time. So there has to be different ports to run different activities at the same time and simultaneously. That is what a port means. So there are different types of ports. There are about 65,000 ports available. The most common for web traffic are port 80, which is the HTTP, and it's not secured, and port 443, which is the HTTPS. These are the standard ports for the web. Web servers start with these two values by default. So you will need both ports to be open. With port 80, you are communicating in the open, so anybody looking can see your communication. If your website doesn't have sensitive information, then you are just fine with port 80 or HTTP protocol. But what if you need to store password or credit card? So SSL is like we lock the information in a briefcase and only unlocks it when necessary. So anyone looking at the parts cannot see what is inside the password, and the same is true in reverse. That is what SSL provides. It provides end-to-end security. Attacks can happen along the way, so your web server has to be protected, and that's why you have to be careful not to install malware, spyware or viruses on your computer. Your computer is where the unlocking and locking happens. So if your PC is not secure, your information can be exposed. And so Google ranks you down if you don't have SSL. Google wants you not to visit sites without HTTPS or SSL. So if a site says HTTPS, that means the site is secured. So now let's talk about choosing the right browsers. A browser renders HTML, CSS and JavaScript into web pages. So the question is, which browser is best for web development? Test your website on major browsers like Chrome, Firefox, Edge, Safari, and use tools like aniuse.com to check browser support for different features. Now that we know about browsers, let's look at what does CDN means. CDN means content delivery networks, and so CDN distributes your website content across various servers worldwide, ensuring quick access and reduced load time. Are you ready to pull it all together? Let's recap how the web works. We have covered HTML, CSS and JavaScript, web servers, IP address, domain names, DNS, ports, SSL, browsers, and CDNs. If you are new to web development, don't worry about understanding everything at once. You will see this concept in action as you progress. Share this video, like it, and subscribe for more in-depth content on web development. Thank you for watching, guys, and if you find this video helpful, please, I urge you to like this video, to subscribe, so that more persons who are interested in web development can have access to this information. This kind of knowledge is often sold online, but I'm offering it free, and your appreciation to me will be to like, to share, and to subscribe to help more people learn about the fundamentals of web development. See you in the next video.